Hey everybody, what's going on? Dace here, and today we are going to be checking out my GG Aleste 1cc. So this one, I have a bit of a story to share about this one. So I'm not sure if it was in 2019 or 2020 or whenever it was, but I did play through GG Aleste 3. I absolutely love that game. I still really enjoy it, and I put tons of time into it even after my initial clear. I love the music, the visuals, the simple mechanics, and the gameplay. Like, everything was just awesome. And if I hadn't known, I would have thought like, wow, this was actually made like ages ago. But of course, like, number 3 was just from a few years back that they did. And I think when I finished that one, I'm pretty sure I checked out 1 and 2, since they're a part of the same collection. But I think I was wanting to just get into something a little different, because I remember 1 and 2 striking me as just being a little too retro feeling at the time. I think I just wanted to go with something a little more modern after the time and energy that I had invested in number 3. And another huge thing that happened was, it was kind of like one of those situations where you jump into an old game. By the way, this is from 1991. It's a compile game for those who aren't familiar with it. But what happened was, I think within the first stage or so, like, I took a hit or something. I was like, oh, I mean, I don't feel like doing the like starting over, and I didn't really feel any sort of draw to push onward. And again, I think it was just because I genuinely wanted something different. Otherwise, I probably would have just like learned the game and gone from there. Because what's interesting is what you're seeing here is me just earlier, or it was like last week, I just booted up, I jumped in, and boom, it was done. And what happened was, it was one of those situations where if you just push through the first stage, even though you might fumble here and there, and you think like, oh, like, do I really want to like replay all this over again? Like, it's one of those things where you can just cruise. As long as you just push through the first stage, you can just cruise through the rest of the game. This one is ridiculously generous in terms of extends. Like, you're gonna see all sorts of fumbles that I make, because I haven't, like, no part of what you see in this run is me learning the game, or having learned the game rather. It's just how it went. It's not very demanding, and even though I fumble all sorts of things because I'm seeing stuff for the first time, like being surprised by bosses, or like just not realizing that certain attacks are going to like bounce around, or whatever the case is, it didn't really matter, because by the end of it you still have a ridiculous amount of lives. And part of why I wanted to show like, I've done, like, since clearing this the first time, I've done a few clears, and even though some of those ones are better with like less lives lost and stuff like that, I wanted to specifically show this one just because it does demonstrate how generous the game is, and how you can sometimes jump into a game and just clear it, even though you haven't really learned anything. As long as you kind of have a basic understanding of how these games work, you can have a blast just jumping in, banging it out. And if you want to continue playing it or do better clears, then awesome. If not, then cool, you have another clear in the bag at least. Now, that being said, I do feel like I could no-miss this for sure. Like, I don't think that would take long at all. It's just a matter of not fumbling silly things, which are pretty easy to do. Like, you have different enemies that might, like we just saw the ones there going like in like a circular motion. Like, you might be focusing on something like that, or like a side shooting enemy scrolling down the screen. You might not realize it's there. But I don't think this game is very demanding or challenging at all. It is literally one you can just cruise through, and depending on your weapon choice, like, I'm not sure what's considered like, ooh, the best weapon. I've always liked I'm not sure, like, yeah, this one here it's called like homing or whatever, but like in GG Aleste 3, I think it's the chain chaser, which I swear by. I love that thing. So yeah, anyway, I want to share this because it's just a cool run where you get to see how a first session goes. And yeah, it's fun times, like really cool levels, even though like things are pretty primitive. Like this was for the Game Gear. It's awesome. And if there's one thing I love about these games, I think I did number 2 last year, and it was the same, like they all function the same way, more or less. In this one, I'm not sure about number 2, and certainly not in this one. I don't think you have a shield of any sort. But in number 3 you do, when you've collected 20 of the gems. But I think it's such a cool system for how basic it is. So the way it works is, every time you get like a power-up or a weapon change icon, or one of the little P crystals, like the orange ones that drop from those like destroyed enemies, you will have like a small window of invincibility. Excuse me. And you also use those crystals. You accumulate more and more, and that powers up your like your shot power or whatever, like, you know, your shot level. And you can see it in the top right, like level 6 right now. I have 55 out of 80, and that keeps going up until a maximum. I think it's something like 8 or whatever. But it's cool because you don't have any bombs, you don't have any like special abilities or anything like that. It's literally just powering up your shot and zeroing in on whatever weapon you want to use. Some people might switch between one or the other depending on the stage or the section of the stage or whatever. I'm fine to just keep this all the way through. There might be times where you even fumble and grab something you don't mean to. But it's really, really cool just to see how fun and engaging something can be when it is as basic of a setup as these games. And with how much I love number 3, I would love to see a GG Aleste 4. I think that would just be super, super cool. And yeah, if you haven't checked that out, actually, I think I want to go back and I'm not sure I would commentate my original clear. I think what I would do these days is probably jump back into number 3 and do something like special mode or whatever, who knows. But just something a little different to keep things switched up. But yeah, we have a lot of really cool creativity in this game. I love like these platforms above the water, and just the enemies aren't they're quite varied, but at the same time they're not so varied that things get overwhelming. And you'll see what I mean more and more. Like, it's pretty easy to stay on top of things. Like, that was a perfect example of just not even really paying attention, just like, oh, doing my own thing, and then, okay, there's a bullet right there, and I'm just taking it. But yeah, like, as you can see, like, there's nothing going on here that's, like, super crazy. And if I'm playing it, like, if you see me, like, just playing it safe, it's because I'm kind of just adjusting to what's what and getting a feel for what I can do without it being too risky. But like, boom, they're done already. So this is with the slow motion turned off. So the way the collection works, I think the default is always there is slowdown, like a processing type. So if there are just a ton of enemies on the screen and like gems falling and that kind of stuff, it will just slow down considerably. But I have that turned off because I wanted the challenge of that. Plus, just keeping the duration down as well. I think, like, for number 3, for instance, because I have the most experience with that, if you're doing the game with slowdown, I think it's something like 53 minutes to complete, and of course that too has to do with like weapon choice, because some weapons will just give you a slower like kill speed for bosses and stuff like that. But in general, the difference is just crazy. Like almost an hour with the slowdown compared to a much shorter time without the slowdown. So anything to shave off time. It's funny because I often think about certain games where I would love the option to just be able to like do games double speed if it meant just banging it out in 15 minutes instead of 30. I think that would be fantastic. I don't care how crazy the 15 minutes is, like just lay it on me and I'll do it. But I think there's just something awesome about shorter games. And it's not to say I'm opposed to, like doing half-hour, 40-minute games. Like, certainly not. Like, I'm all for that too. But I think there's just something nice and refreshing when you know, okay, it's just like a 15-minute or 20-minute experience. The Psycho games are fantastic for that. Like 12 minutes in and you can clear the first loop. I love stuff like that. So anyway, we have some really cool enemies here. We have some cool stuff going on with like the lasers. Like those dudes coming down the side, that's a perfect example too of just like the side shooting dudes that can catch you off guard if you're not paying attention. But yeah, the music is just fantastic. And it was nice banging this out for the first time. There was I think it was last year. Yeah, I'm pretty sure, yeah. Or maybe it was the year before, I'm not even sure now. Whenever Grey's Counter GM came out, I remember having a similar experience when I got into like the last two difficulty modes, like the hardest ones. It was simply like, as long as I could just, like, I was determined to no miss stage 1, and as long, like, it starts off crazy, like, it's absolutely bonkers how crazy that game is, even though it's like, I feel it's a simple and easy game compared to a lot of shmups, but stage 1 does just lay things on super thick right from the get-go, and I found, like, as long as I can no miss the first stage, you can just cruise the rest of the game with the exact same approach as you would use for the easiest mode out there. Like, I literally did nothing different. I approached every single stage, every single boss fight the same way, regardless of the difficulty. But it was just a matter of making it through the first stage without taking a hit. And not that that was like precisely what happened here, but it's in the same kind of vein where it's like, if you can just get through without that kind of mental thought of like, oh man, like if stage 1 is like tripping me up, do I really want to like hassle with repeating this over and blah blah blah, like, yeah, you can just go through everything. So anyway, these stages are like, these bonus stages, I mean, are pretty straightforward. I'm just gonna switch my position here. But it's a nice opportunity, like let's say you have taken hits here or there and your shot level drops 1 or 2 levels or whatever. This is a great time to just stockpile, because these enemies that filter in like microwaves, in short or small waves, they're really not doing anything threatening, but they're giving you tons of opportunities to get the little gems. So you can very quickly just boost your shot level again. And I'm not sure what the maximum life count is. It might be close to 20. Like, I know one of the runs I did after this one, it was almost a no miss, except for some really silly fumbles that, like, attacks that I just totally forgot about that would be happening from certain bosses. But I think I had something like 19 lives, or 18 or 19, I'm not sure. But it just goes to show, like, in some games you will have, let's say, like the maximum possible. You'll maybe start with 2 or 3, and then you can get like an extend, and then you can get 2 score extends. So you can only afford to take so many hits. In this, you can afford to take hits as, like, pretty much as often as you want and still just cruise. And I think that's cool to see every once in a while, because it's like, it's just an opportunity where you can casually beat something without sinking huge time and energy into it. And if you already have something on the go, like that you know is a huge project or a huge clear that's going to take weeks or months, then it's nice having stuff like this to kind of just jump into, clear it, and away you go. If you want to do more with it, you want to challenge yourself more, then that's awesome. If not, then you just move on, and you were at least able to jump in for a little bit and check it out and beat it. So stuff like that is always refreshing, because it's like a bit of a, not a rest period, because if you have a main game that you're working on, it's not like you're giving that a rest, but there is something that kind of is just a little more lighthearted and gives you a little bit of a change of pace for like an evening or two or whatever. And here we are, round 5 already. So this whole stage is just like one giant spaceship. And I love the design of this thing, just these huge, huge guns. But yeah, these games are a lot of fun. I thoroughly enjoy this stuff. Actually, for those who have never jumped into or seen these games before, the GG Aleste games, if you do want to see more of this stuff, my friend Scowsh did numbers 1, 2, and 3, like put all of his clears up simultaneously on like a single video, so you can kind of compare how they go and all that kind of stuff. It's really cool, so feel free to check that out. Maybe I'll leave the link in, yeah, the description or the comments or something like that. But yeah, so like, it's obvious that the game doesn't throw anything demanding your way. Like, we don't, like, huge sections like this where we're just cruising along and literally nothing is happening. So this is actually, this game could certainly be a contender if anyone wants to consider, like, let's say you're super new to these games, you don't feel like you're doing that great in them, but you want to have fun with something. This one is perfect because it's straightforward, it's not throwing a lot your way, it's fun, it's engaging, like, it's all these things, and as long as you just push through, you might need to do a little learning if certain things are really tripping you up, but like I said, you get oodles of lives, oodles of opportunities to power up your shot. You can experiment and have a blast just checking out different weapons, seeing what you like more. I realize you're not really seeing anything other than pretty much one kind. But you do have, I'm not sure what it goes by in this one. It's like some kind of like burst that goes forward, and then the shots kind of like spread upwards, and it cancels out enemy projectiles, if I'm not mistaken. And then there's like the laser beam that probably has one of the best like damage outputs, to be honest, because of how like limited the range is. And then of course there's likely a spread shot. There's another one. You can see like all of these down in the bottom right. I just don't recall the names. But then there's one where there's like bullet canceling things that circle your ship. So you got options. You can experiment with that kind of stuff. It's a blast doing that because it really, really does alter the play style. With the chain chaser or the homing that I'm using, because it zeroes in on like peripheral enemies that like are swooping in or whatever, it really does free up your focus. Like, you don't have to line up and shoot certain enemies because you know the blue rings are going to do it for you. So that's handy. But at the same time, I do feel like the bullet canceling circling stuff that goes around you would be a lot of fun too. I haven't done much with that one, to be honest, but I think if I was going to do something other than Chain Chaser, I would probably do that. Just because when you do have that thing powered up to its max, I would imagine it's pretty awesome and just covers most of the space around you. And so in that situation, like for instance, some of the fumbles, like some of the lives that I lose in this run could have quite possibly been avoided if something was circling me, canceling that stuff out. Like, there's still a chance you're going to have something slip through the cracks, but there's just as much chance that it'll hit the bullet, cancel it out before it gets you, and that could make all the difference. But I think in general, like, this is probably just one of the... Well, it's one of my favorite weapons. That was just silly. Oh my goodness. It's one of my favorite weapons just because it is unique. I know a lot of people swear by, or at least in number 3, they swear by the napalm or whatever it is, because it has huge sections in front of you that everything is canceled, like as long as the explosions are like blowing enemy bullets away. So that's considered like the easiest one to, or like the weapon that you will have the easiest time clearing the game with, because it is just very powerful against enemies and bosses and at clearing space for you. But I've always just stuck to my guns, so to speak, with Chain Chaser. There's just something about it that I love. It's just a fun time. Super cool to use. Again, here we go, like one enemy comes out one side and then another one comes out, but really nothing is happening. Even the attack pattern the boss was doing is not really a threat, because it's just the same kind of stuff over, so you just position yourself. And it's not like you're moving slowly either. It's, Your movement speed in this game is decent. The Moonchild. So this stage is an interesting one. I remember last week when I did this for the first time, it's funny to me because you go down so many levels. It just feels like the stage just keeps going, where the other stages are maybe 5 minutes, whatever, I'm not sure how long, and then this one just feels like it's 100 like that. What are we doing? How did I take that? But yeah, this one just feels like you just go down 100 different floors, and like there's no end to it. And I think what can sometimes happen too is, like, when you are a certain amount of stages in and you've seen that, okay, the game isn't really throwing anything my way, maybe there's a part of like the subconscious that starts to relax a little bit, and maybe that's why some of these fumbles happen too. Because it's like you start thinking like, oh wow, like I'm just cruising through this whole game, like I don't need to pay as much attention. I'm not sure if that's accurate or not. It's just something that comes to mind, though, as a possibility. Because I think, like, when it comes to something like an actually demanding game, like my responses to things and like reading what's happening on the screen is like really up there. Whereas in here, it's kind of like, oh, I see something happening, and then I just don't even bother doing anything, and then I just take a bullet. But because I had never done this game before and had never even made it beyond stage 1, since I kind of just lost interest and turned it off at the time, I had no idea what kind of ending this would have. So at this point I'm thinking, okay, this is probably the second last stage. And even though I have 8 lives, which in a lot of games, like, you would be laughing with 8 lives, I was still thinking like, okay, maybe something's gonna happen in this stage, or like by the time I get to the final boss, like who knows? It might just be like all out the window. I have no idea what this game is gonna like pull in the last moments. But yeah, it was what it was. And so yeah, that was another really silly situation. Like I could have just dropped to the bottom of the screen when those phasing dudes first showed up in like the four corners, and that would have dealt with them. That's what I do these days, is just stay down. The shot takes care of all of them before they even do anything, and for that matter, they don't even really do anything. And then, yeah, when those other dudes show up from the sides, those ones you really got to watch for. Sometimes one of them will phase in right where you're like in the bottom right corner where you see my lives and the 7, or like the ship icon in the 7. Sometimes they'll phase in right there, and so you won't even really recognize it right away. Like out of the corner of your eye, you won't notice it right away until you start getting used to it more and more. But that's one of the like tricky ways in which the game can kind of mess you up if you're not really watching for that kind of stuff. So even though it's not a difficult game by any means, there are still ways where you can just fumble if you don't know what to look for. And that can be said about pretty much anything. I mean, we just keep going down and down. Now that I think about it, man, the laser is kind of tempting, because normally in games I'll go for... Actually, yeah, I'm not sure like what percentage, but I do enjoy like from time to time going with the strongest shot type, but the most difficult to use, just due to usually that is just like it'll be like a linear attack type, like a straight shot, and because you have such limited range, the way they balance that is of course making it more powerful. So I would love to see how quickly the laser takes down bosses. Compared to some of the other things. Like, just crazy, like very little going on there, as you saw. And this is the final stage. And there were also parts, if you saw me being like careful in certain areas, sometimes I wasn't even sure if something was like a background that I could actually fly over, or if it would destroy my ship. So like things like that, like if you noticed any sort of like me just like hesitating to fly over a spot or something like that, it's just because I was thinking to myself like, oh, can I actually fly here? Like, is it background or is it something that's going to destroy me? But yeah, from what I noticed, like you can pretty much go anywhere. So like this is what I meant. Like normally I would just drop straight down and it would take care of the weapon I have would just take care of all of that stuff. Oh, like that, I was away and then I went back into it because I didn't realize that guy was gonna shoot something at me. The bubblegum bubbles. blowing bubbles. So for a final stretch, like once again, like you're not seeing anything that's really threatening. Like, yeah, maybe if you let the balls accumulate too much, I'm not sure how many can be on screen or how long those last for. Maybe they stay on until something happens to them. Who knows? I haven't done any sort of testing with this, of course. But yeah, as you can see, it's easy to stay on top of. Oh man, those side shots! I think, like, yeah, just realizing that just a moment too late. And then, oh, like taking another hit there, like what am I doing? Just silly stuff. And then sections like this, like nothing happens at all. So like if you want to clear a game for the first time, or you're just looking for something more on the casual side to jump into just for like half an hour, whatever the case is, definitely consider this. And it's the same with number 2. Number 3 might trip some people up a little more because it is a longer game, and some of the later stages can be pretty wild. There are some moments from like, yeah, even maybe stages 3 and 4 that can be problematic if you're not paying attention. And that was me just not realizing, like, oh, okay, like all these things are going to be coming out of them. So now this is what I'm talking about. Like, I have 11 lives, so it's like, okay, this is ridiculously generous of the game for me to have this many, but at the same time, I've powered down to level 1 because I'm just fumbling all these simple things here. So I'm thinking, like, man, am I actually going to beat this? Like, if I'm going to, I'm going to need to not just throw these lives away. I'm going to need to get serious here. Like, right into that one. Oh my goodness. But there we go. But yeah, it is a fun game. And I find it is one, because it was so easy to just jump into and clear it. I think part of the inspiration to clear it more times was just to improve on how the first one went. But oh man, that's so cool. I can only imagine having played this way back in the day. Anyway, I'll leave off there for now. If you guys want to enjoy the credits, feel free. If not, that's fine too. But yeah, thanks for checking this out. It's been a long time, it feels like, since I did a commentary on a 1cc. I've been just so busy with other channel related projects, and yeah, just other stuff. So yeah, like I'm still playing things and whatnot, but all that other stuff is much longer term things. So it was really cool jumping into this, clearing it, and yeah, sharing this with you. So I will have some other stuff coming out in the next few days for sure. Some review related things and some controller related stuff coming out soon enough as well. So yeah, stay tuned for all that great stuff. I really appreciate everybody who stuck through until the end, and I really appreciate all the support and everything, like the stuff I always say, like comments, likes, views. I cannot thank everybody enough. So anyway, that's enough babbling from me. Thanks for listening to this. Have a stellar one, and we will see you next time.